I was recently on Last Born in the Wilderness, a long form interview podcast, to discuss how martial arts is represented, how it is taught, how it changes depending on the audience, and the left and right's relationship to it. We go far beyond the call to arms and examine what happens when the conversation goes no further than that. For those unfamiliar with my work, it may be unlike any conversation you've heard.
This is Last Born in the Wilderness. I'm Patrick Farnsworth. Thank you for being here. In this episode, I speak with Sam from Liberation Martial Arts. He joined me to discuss how martial arts can be a truly liberatory body practice. I say this in the interview, but I know almost nothing about martial arts. Aside from a few brief experiences, I am largely ignorant of the training and practices that fall under this broad and loosely defined category of body practices. My main exposure to martial arts is through popular culture, movies, TV shows, comic books, and ads for or clips from UFC fights or other MMA-related things. Obviously, my view is insufficient, clouded, and cartoonish. And so alongside this dim view, any curiosity or compulsion that I've had to train in any sort of self-defense or martial arts discipline can be summed up by this pithy, anti-fascist call to action. A fash lifted weights today. Did you? Effectively, go to the gun range, go to the gym, get fit, and learn how to defend yourself and your community. No one else is going to do it for you. These aren't necessarily bad ideas, of course, but Liberation Martial Arts reframes this entirely. Sam, the originator of LMA, articulates and demonstrates his pedagogic approach to martial arts training, rooted in anti-authoritarian and decolonial theory and practice. LMA is intended to be liberatory. So what does that mean? Is martial arts, as it's broadly defined and commonly practiced and instructed, not liberatory? And if so, why? As a naive observer, I wanted to understand LMA and its origins. I invited Sam on to better understand martial arts as a somatic, political, and cultural practice, the unexamined choices that reinforce the structures of these disciplines, and how LMA takes up an entirely different orientation and approach. So Sam was generous enough to have this dialogue with me. Last Born in the Wilderness is a fully listener-supported project, so thank you very much. Thank you so much to the supporters for keeping the work going. If you enjoy the work that I'm producing with this podcast, please consider heading over to the Patreon page at patreon.com/lastborninthewilderness and become a supporter. All the resources and notes for this interview and every other interview I've produced for this podcast can be found on their respective episode pages at lastborninthewilderness.com. Well, Sam, thank you for being here. I've been really looking forward to this. So thanks for coming on the podcast.
No, appreciate you inviting me and excited and kind of had a hunch this was eventually coming. And so we could get into that too, as I have questions for you, as you have questions for me.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, because we talked about this a little bit before, but I probably talked about my process and preparation, but I think to avoid as much nervousness and anxiety before an interview, due to some not so great experiences with technical issues and just not being as prepared as I should have years ago, it just really stuck with me. So I now send an outline of questions. This is a good practice for people, I think, to do if you're going to be an interviewer. But you were like, hey, I want this to be a conversation. I want there to be back and forth. I might have questions for you, And I was like, oh, that's great feedback. And I really like that. So yeah, I'm open to whatever I can answer for you too, because I'm just a guy. And I think part of if it was a hesitation, because I've been aware of you for some time, of liberation martial arts. I think my hesitation is that I know you because of the politics.
Mm-hmm.
I've only had a few experiences personally with any martial arts of any kind, but and they were okay. They were just kind of weird, and I just didn't didn't continue doing it. Right? It just wasn't something I was super interested in. So I think that's part of it. Is this like I'm coming to this discussion with you as someone quite naive about that, but I think coming from a place of naivety is actually interesting, and you can ask pretty basic questions, like a child asking their parent, like why the sky is blue or something,
Yeah.
That's going to be like me right now. So just be aware I'm like a child talking to you.
Actually, that is why I wanted kind of the consent in the first place to ask you some questions, because like I'm sure, the typical process for a podcast interview, right? Because I do podcasts too, you often start off with like the origin story of the person you're interviewing with, right? Mm-hmm. And that makes sense because the person, like you mentioned before, sometimes you're interviewing somebody who has a book, right? So like, who is this person who wrote this book? Or they're like, there's a reason for them being there, or it fits with like the theme of the day or the theme of your podcast. Whereas me and, the thing that you want to talk to me about doesn't fit any theme. Yeah. I have no book to promote, right? Yeah. So then there's also an origin story then for something so novel and so niche. How do we get to here, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I saw you, a while ago, like follow my account, and I am new of your podcast because I had listened to it in the past. And I'm like, okay, this is usually like the first step. Somebody does this, they kind of get a vibe check, and then like, it happens, right? So I knew it was happening, right? Or I didn't know for sure,
right?
I'm not a fortune teller, right? I don't know the future, but it's like that's usually the way it goes, right? But then it's like, what is the impetus? What is the origins of wanting to even talk about the subject? Because, if we're talking about politics and stuff, like there's already other stuff out there, right? There's people who have anti-fascist accounts, right?
Yeah.
Who are like talking about self-defense and everybody needs to get armed or needs to learn how to fight. They come out with zines, and there's already a lot of that kind of stuff, right? And then I was talking about something very different. So there's a contrast there, right? Because then I'm sure you see some of that too. You see like the anti-fascists, like, I'm not saying I'm not anti-fascist, but like there's a certain kind of like to stereotype, like it plays the stereotype, like the things you would expect is the things you see. We need to get armed. We need to train to fight the fast train today. Did you? I was not talking about any of that. So then there was an unconscious choice you had to make, right? Maybe you have interviewed those types too, but then you're like, well, here's a contrasting view. So there's still a choice. It's not like binary. You can interview both, but there's a decision to be like, there's an alternative.
Right.
So I guess the origin of this interview is like, what made you decide to even go down that path? Like, why was this even interesting to you?
Well, actually, I was just going to say, you mentioned like you put this in a post, I think it may have been one of your earliest posts introducing liberation martial arts on Patreon back in 2022. And you say, we don't follow the Fash lifted weights today, did you model? And you go on, we can discuss what that is. But I was thinking about that because so much of what anti-fascism is not always, but it's obviously anti-fascism. You are doing you're trying to oppose the rise of fascists and far-right organizing and all of the work that they're doing, and that's all very important stuff. Mm. But when it comes to the body and how you train or how you, I don't know, how you are in your body, how you exist in the world and how you interact with other bodies and all this stuff, the idea that, fascists are getting ripped, they're working out, they're training, they're going to the gun range, are you going to do the same? Mm-hmm. It's not to say that isn't valuable stuff, but there's also a bit of a reaction to the reaction, or it's just a reaction to that. And as you say, from my understanding of LMA is like, no, we're actually kind of just taking a completely different approach to that. Mm-hmm. We're not even reacting to that. That's what it is. We're not saying you can't learn how to defend yourself, but it's more about, it's about something else. There's an essence there that is missing in even just
supposedly apolitical martial arts training, which I think what I learned from you and when I started following you was realizing that I didn't really think about it too much, and it's so funny because it's so fucking obvious, but yeah, a lot of martial arts, whether it's just the cultural component of it, how it sits in popular culture, how we watch spectator sports, how we listen to various podcasters and such, to when you actually go and train in person, there actually is a political dimension to that training, the pedagogy, like how you're supposed to train and hone your skills. And even the apolitical is political, is what I'm saying. So I think when I recognize that in what you were at least writing and putting out there, then that's what really caught my interest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my origin, at least in my interest. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's like a good segue to what this whole thing is, right? It starts with like unlearning and self-reflection. What are the things we just bought wholesale and assumptions we took that we didn't even know were assumptions? We just took them as like facts of the world, or we're like kind of like fish. We don't see the water anymore because we take it for granted. It just is something that is baked into reality, right?
Yeah.
When it isn't like water and we're not like fish and it isn't baked into reality, it's more of like path dependency, or just something like we just bought into and without ever questioning it, right?
Right.
Because if you're talking about why different groups train, right? Their reasons why might be very different, right? To opposing groups, but their how, right? If we're just looking at like, oh, okay, but what about manuals for like, how should we train? Like, okay,
Right.
One is saying you should lift weights. The other is saying you should lift weights. Okay, let's look at their manuals. It might be the same manual though,
Right.
They're prescribing the same things. They're telling you why you ought to do it. They're teaching you the same ways. So I like the word you used, essence. There's like a same essence there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
That's, I guess, ultimately at its essence is trying to give an alternative essence.
Right.
So even if people can't verbalize it, right? And the reason why I asked you questions is because even the questions you had in mind, maybe we could like clarify that even more, right? Get to the essence, because at the beginning, right? You feel something is off, but you can't put your finger on it, put words to it. And that's why, even asking you about it, it sounds like, yeah, you had something. You were like, okay, there's something going on here.
Right.
Let's get to the bottom of this.
Right.
And then it sounds like that is how we got to now.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I've only had these moments in my life where I was interested in martial arts, and one was when I was a little kid and I did like a couple karate classes. And then when I was in my 20s, and this is embarrassing to admit on this podcast of this political orientation or whatever, but I did listen to Joe Rogan when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Before, well, he was always kind of right wing, but to be fair, to be real, if I were to think retrospectively, but at the time, I guess I was tolerant of it because he seemed interesting to me at the time.
Yeah.
But
at one time he was just more like popular culture, which we could talk about how popular culture is a self-right wing, but he was just kind of like general popular culture. And then he shifted much more explicitly. Right.
Yeah. And so I think, but listening, it just sort of seeds the idea. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll start doing this. And I decided to go with a friend to a local jiu-jitsu. What is the word? Is it it's not dojo, right? That's the wrong word.
Let's just use a more like broad term, like gym. I think gym is
gym.
Safe.
Okay, sorry.
It encompasses a lot of places, right?
See, it's like my ignorance is really shining there. I went to the gym and I remember the first lesson. It was basically they weren't mean. There wasn't a political nature that I was noticing, but it was more like the lead instructor. He was sort of demonstrating like how inexperienced I was, and he kind of threw me around and put me in a chokehold. Right? I didn't choke. I didn't like pass out, but it was the first time in my life that I had ever been handled that way. And then I grappled with other people who were far more experienced than me, and they were much more gentle. But I think what happened was I just sensed like, I don't know. I think it was a bit of a shock to my actual body and my system. I don't think I was ready to go through that. I didn't know what to expect, but I wasn't quite ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was just reflecting on that before this meeting with you, because I was like, well, why did I stop going? You know, and it wasn't that there was a hostile environment, but there was just this sense that this was it wasn't the kind of education that I wanted or that I respond to, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And speaking of essence, I don't know, there was a feeling there, and it might have just been a response that it just wasn't for me. But the feeling was like you need to kind of suffer for a while before you get good at it, and that may be true in some case, but it's also just it actually felt humiliating too.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a common experience in martial arts?
You know, it's hard to talk about all martial arts because there's not even a consensus on what martial arts is, right?
Yeah.
But let's just freeze there and talk about that experience. What happened to you, right? If that pushed everybody away, you know, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in general wouldn't be so fast growing, right?
Right.
So it was off-putting for you, but I would say that is also the sales tactic.
Really?
Yeah, because, you know, it's a two-way street. It's not just what martial arts does to you. There's also a type of like audience capture. You got to give them what they want too, right? So let's think about like even another standard sales tactic that isn't like, you know, online media stuff, right? Not print ads, not like those kind of like typical advertisements, but like in real life sales tactics, a common one, not just in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but in other martial arts, there's often like a martial arts demonstration. And oftentimes what they do in these demonstrations is very different from what they do in the actual gym. Or sometimes they've reoriented the training to match what they do in the demonstration. And what is the demonstration? You kind of have to live up to the expectations of what people have of that martial art, right? That's why it's choreographed. That's why it's scripted. Like, to use like pro wrestling parlance, it's the work. Because if you just actually did something unpredictable, meaning unscripted, unchoreographed, me and this other person, we're not going to talk about anything. We're just going to do the martial art against each other. It'll look a lot more chaotic than people are prepared for. It'll look bad, right? And the thing is, you have to train a long time to be perceived as bad. Like what we think is bad and looks chaotic and bad, it took these people a long time to get to that point, right?
Interesting.
So to give them their expectations, then now we got to do a work. We have to choreograph it, and then it looks all clean and very precise and deliberate, right? And that lives up to the expectations that people have. And then it's like, okay, either they're interested or not interested. So I would go back now. Let's think about that experience you had. For a lot of people, like, you know, one of the questions you had, I'll just raise it, right? Like one of the questions you had was about like how martial arts is portrayed, right? And one of the ways that it's portrayed is kind of like this power fantasy. And that isn't just because of like, this is media portrayal now we're talking about, right? Not the gyms, not the Joe Rogans, how the media, like movies, comic books, TV shows, things like that, portray it, kids shows. And it's kind of like a promise to power. It's promising you like individual power, because martial arts is also not a team sport, right?
Yeah.
And that's what attracts some people too. It's like this individual power fantasy. So for you, it's off-putting. But some people go in there and they kind of get like thrown around like that. And they're like, wow, I want access to that power. They're like giving you proof. Like, look, I could do this to you. You could do the same. It almost probably feels like superhuman. It's like, how is this person doing this to me? I feel completely helpless.
Yeah.
Like two human beings, right? We're supposed to be human, but now this person seems above human to me, right? Like they're able to do things that are promised only in like X-Men or like comic book movies. They have some kind of power, you know, because like human to human, you would think, you know, like kind of similar footing. Whereas this person we're not similar footing. We're not from the same planet, right? So, you know, for you and some folks, it's like, whoa, I don't like this. And for some people, it's like, oh, give me that. I want to be like that. I want to gain power to that. I want to gain that same power. And then some people who come in wanting that might feel that. And it's like, once they feel that, they're like, yeah, I wanted that power, but I still, on some kind of somatic or visceral level, I still don't like and appreciate what you did to me.
Right.
So I'm out, right? And there's other reasons people don't go back.
Yeah.
Money, schedule,
Right.
Fleeting interest. They had interest that week and then the next week they don't, right? But that is, I think, kind of a way for them to try to get people to sign up.
So is this how martial arts, again, I'm speaking in vast generalizations, so please help me be more specific if I need to be, but this culture, this perception, and as it's integrated into these actual practices, that feeling you're describing, because when I think about people's political orientation and where they sit and how they feel how power should exist in a society,
Mm-hmm.
that is actually deeply somatic. It's how they feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
People will have a feeling and then they try to rationalize it, and then they try to create an ideological structure that makes sense, that kind of validates that feeling, right? So if someone has the same experience I did, but they felt like, actually, that felt good to me because I want to be that person who dominates another. Like, I want to have that power that feels good to me. Does that seem to kind of naturally lend itself to a more authoritarian or right-wing political orientation? Is that kind of the source of it? Is it somatic?
Yeah. Well, let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if like you go in there and even if you're seeking that, I don't know if you feel good per se, right? I would think if you surveyed like 100 people who went through that same experience, even amongst the ones that signed up, it's not that they liked getting like, thrown about or like controlled. It's more textured, I would say. Some parts of them on a somatic level, I think, didn't like it, right? Because you feel humiliated. That's the whole point. You're supposed to feel powerless because now you see how powerful they are, right? How powerful this art is. So you don't like that. But then for some people, there might be a sense of awe, like, wow.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that like, and also going back to like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in particular, which in its origins is fascistic, not even reactionary, fascistic in its origins. But
right.
What made it unique and what still kind of makes it unique is like it kind of lives up to the promise. Martial arts like promises over promises, like you could do this and that, jump over this, like, all kinds of promises. And then now we have enough, like I guess, street sense to know like a lot of these martial arts don't live up to it.
Right.
But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is one of the ones where you walk in and you could be like really strong, lift weights, be that like person where like, all things are equal. I'm just physically stronger than you, right? Then I could like, physically control you, right? Mm-hmm. And then they go into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu lives up to the promise where this person is also made to feel helpless. Mm-hmm. So I think for some people, there's that kind of an awe in that, like, oh, this thing is different.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Like there's a lot of like fantastic, fantastical promises made, but this is kind of, it's not even fantastical. Like I'm feeling it materially. Mm-hmm. Like it is not an ideal. It is not something that's existing in my thoughts or my imagination. It's like it is existing in reality. You're doing this to me. So I think that for some people triggers like an awe. I think for some people it triggers a curiosity. It is very interesting. You're like, whoa, what is this? This is very interesting, right? So I think that it's textured.
Yeah.
I think what lends itself to more right-wing tendencies, I think, is more of the individual power aspect of it. Because a lot of people who come to it, right, even if they're of a left leaning, in theory, we should be like collective, right? But martial arts is interesting because they'll often even say like, I never liked team sports. I never liked relying on other people or working with other people. Yeah. I like the martial arts. You're part of a team as insofar as you're all part of the same gym, but everything is one-on-one, right?
Right.
You're sparring one-on-one. Oftentimes it's not even one-on-one. If you're doing kata or whatever, it's one. You're completely isolated. You're just doing the thing by yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like either one-on-one or one. It's like two or less.
Mm-hmm.
It involves two people or less, right? So I think that lends itself to that type of individualism, and self-isolation can lend itself to right-wing tendencies, because that's, at the essence, at least part of the essence of the right is that, right? It is that individual power. As far as like authoritarian structure, right? When we think about like things like patriarchy, right? That's not something some people choose to be in. That's just foisted upon us, right?
Yeah.
We live in a patriarchal society. We live in a white supremacist society. We're just born into it. If martial arts is authoritarian, it is now we have to reframe how we think about that term or even think about that idea, because this is something that we chose, right? It's not. So some people compare like, oh, it's the patriarchy of this. When you go to martial arts and compare the authoritarian nature of martial arts, it's different. It's not the same kind of thing, because one is unchosen and one is chosen. And oftentimes people are seeking that type of leadership, right? Seeking some kind of like, as a friend put it, like the great man, like instead of like the great man theory of like history, it's like the great man theory of knowledge, where it's like you want this person who is like Mr. Miyagi or one of those like tropes you have in your head, and you want that. So now like that's more difficult to unpack.
Yeah.
Because yes, it is top down, and this person is like this kind of like great man. Usually it's a man of knowledge of like, this subject matter, but that's what you wanted, right? Going back to like audience capture, and it's self-reinforcing. They're going to play that up more, but you see people walk in wanting that, and then you play up to that more, right? I've seen like Asian teachers, because I've been in the martial arts for a long time, so I'm kind of like at an age where I could be like a martial arts elder, and I know other people my age, who are Asian martial arts instructors, and then over time I see them playing the stereotype, right? Because it's more lucrative that way. It's like what people wanted, and I don't even know if they fully know they're doing it, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like going to like something like Jean Baudrillard, simulations, simulacra, right? Sometimes like, there's a caricature of a real person. The real person sees the caricature of themselves, and then they start playing to that role, and they don't even know. Right?
I mean, this happens in so many different fields, people. It happens a lot. And I don't know if it's like accelerated with the type of information we're getting and how it's being, how we're making content. I don't know. I don't know if it's like the feedback is shorter. It's turnaround is faster. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It does seem to happen over and over again. I think there's people this is a kind of extreme example, I suppose, but like police, I think police are actually informed by the way they're represented in media, and they try to live up to that representation in part, right? Like that does happen. There's this reinforcing of that within the actual thing itself. So I think I can totally see how in martial arts, you in whatever discipline, there might be a stereotype, a trope of what you want, and then you end up becoming that thing, and because it's more lucrative, as you said. There's an actual gain to that. You make more money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you might not even be aware of it.
Yeah.
On a conscious level. Now we're getting like existentialist here a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is okay. So I'm just curious if you're willing to share a little bit, because I want to know like if you have however much you want to share about your background and what you've practiced over your life, and maybe what it was that kind of got you to where you are today. Like, where was the shift? How did you, I don't know, lack of a better term, radicalize? Like, what exactly happened? Because you saw it at some point, I assume, and then you maybe you were always this way. I don't know. Maybe you just came out of the womb this way and you understood, already. But I doubt it. I think most people have that experience, and then they move into what they really are passionate about and really want to do. So I'm just curious what that process was like for you.
So when you say this, what do you mean by this? Like this as in, how did I get into martial arts, or how did I get, because you even use the term radicalized, so we're talking about politics, but then it also seems like, how did I start my martial arts journey? Or
did you ever view those two things, your political views, separate from your martial arts practice? That would be the first caveat question I have.
Yes.
And what was it that forced you or led you or gently pushed you in the direction to where you recognize that actually those two things are not as separate as you may have thought?
So martial arts was many things for me. And I don't know if that's just unique to me, because I started martial arts in the 80s. And so being Korean, born in Korea, I moved to the US in the 80s. And so there was a lot of Korean martial art, quote unquote Korean martial art, is Taekwondo. And there were a lot of these Taekwondo gyms opening up in Los Angeles at the time because new immigrants were coming in. Some of them knew Taekwondo. The reason why I say quote unquote is because going back to even like consensus about martial arts, we talk about the thing as if it's like a solid thing that we know for sure about, but it's like Taekwondo isn't even Korean, even though it's like the flagship Korean martial art. It's actually Japanese in origins, right? This like colonialism does that. It makes things like messy and just like entangles things. So, but a lot of Koreans didn't know that back then. Actually, the older ones did. The younger ones only knew some kind of myth making, and then now a lot more people are aware again. But anyway, so Los Angeles in the 80s, Korean immigrants. Why I took martial arts, again, it goes back to choices, right? I was young, so I didn't have a choice. My parents put me in there, right? But the reason why, and why the Korean immigration story is important, is because they put me in there for very different reasons than why I think people take martial arts now, especially immigrants, people of color. Which is for cultural reasons. It was a cultural context because LA in the 80s, there wasn't much connection to Korea.
Okay.
There wasn't the Korean language schools, and also it was a different media landscape, and Korea itself was different, we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet, right? And then there isn't this kind of like more broad acceptance and accessibility to Korean media like there is now. So how do we access Korean culture, right? Because the immigrants at the time were very much weary that their kids would lose connection to their culture. And the only thing available was Taekwondo, was the martial art. So the reason why I was there, and most of these Taekwondo schools back then was like, just at least in Los Angeles, were Korean kids. We were all there for the same reason. It was for cultural reasons. Now, Taekwondo schools, I don't think it's going to be disproportionately Korean. I don't even think there's going to be that many Koreans at all, if any. I think for now, Koreans, the Korean American diaspora, maybe not so much interested in connections to Korea. And I think like for diaspora and like immigrant Americans and children of immigrant Americans that come from like, there's like a large population of Christians. I think like Christian, like the church has become like the new, like the third space. Right. Especially Protestant churches in particular. Right. So for the, and in Korea, they're not even that Christian. Like Korean Americans are disproportionately more Christian. But now it centers around that. So it's less about, it's whatever, cultural context you get within a church, but it's still about the church. So the reasons back then were different. So that's why I don't think like as many Koreans today are going to be interested in that. And then now I think probably people are going to train for different reasons. Like I want to put my kid in there because I'm afraid they're going to get bullied. They never think their kid is going to be the bully. Right? It's always like, what is going to happen to them?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They can be harmed. They are not capable of harm, but they can be harmed. Right? So there could be all kinds of reasons. So going back to that, then there was like a cultural context. So then martial arts was always like, I thought of it differently. It wasn't just like, it was a physical practice, but I didn't think of it like self-defense. I thought of it as a cultural context. And then from that cultural context, it wasn't just about like the physical form. That it's like, well, what's the cultural context? These are like concepts. There's like this, like, there's also a layer to this that is driven by ideas, driven by words. So then that got me interested in philosophy, like the philosophy of this martial art or martial arts in general. Because like oftentimes, like, again, playing the stereotype, right? Teachers will try to sound philosophical. They'll try to present themselves as philosophers. But then I was like, wait, this sounds like more like self-help, that kind of stuff, like, or just like, fortune cookie stuff. And this doesn't seem like philosophy to me. And then I got interested in like, the academic type of philosophy rather than the self-help books, right? Then started reading more philosophy. From the Western traditions and then the Eastern traditions. And then once you get into philosophy and you look at a practice, then it's like, how do you also not see it as political? You're already seeing it as some kind of ideology anyway, right? There's some kind of ideological thing happening, some kind of worldview, right? And then what is that worldview? And then politics is a way of naming types of worldviews.
Right.
So I don't know if there was any one moment it kind of happened in that sequence, and it kind of had to happen in that sequence for me to see it that way.
Okay.
Like if I didn't get an interest in just reading philosophy, period, who knows? Like, I don't know if this would have happened. It needed me to like read, like talking about Baudrillard, but things like that.
Right.
It had to go that way. And why I got into philosophy is like a whole different track.
Right.
But, how does anybody get into philosophy? It's like a whole different, you get there some random way, but it happens. So it had to be like the convergence of, I was interested in philosophy. I was very interested in martial arts. And then having that lens opened my eyes to realizing that it was political all along.
Okay. Well, I guess that just that brings me then. So, did you start identifying patterns or pedagogies or things within how people were practicing and training in martial arts that you just realized that you had a completely different approach to? I mean, what was it that you saw maybe in yourself or in others that you just felt like this isn't how we should be doing this, or this isn't the approach that I think we should have? I mean, like, just curious, like, what was it that gave you the sense that you had to move in this different direction altogether?
So again, it's like a sequential thing, and it's like happened over a course of time. But I would say there's two milestones. The first milestone is I started chronicling my martial arts progress and learning online in the early 2000s. This was when blogs were still popular, before people started just only watching videos of people talking. People would read blogs, and this was way before Substack. And you didn't have just like a place where you could just, do it easily, other than a place called LiveJournal. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So I started tracking my progress, talking about things we learned. But then already back then I was like, because I was interested in improving quickly, I was kind of analyzing the teaching methods and could it be done better? Could I teach myself better? Because it's also self-directed, where, in martial arts, there are the students that just do whatever the teacher says. But even the teacher, the reason why they got good is because they took it upon themselves to like study on their own. And look for ways to like get better on their own, outside of just class times. So especially in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, especially at that time, there was like a very much a DIY spirit. And so it was not that odd to do that. So I was always looking to ways to improve, reading different books, like even like kinesiology books, biomechanics books. And then, so during that blog writing period, I stumbled upon a documentary about debate. And the name escapes me now, but it was an HBO documentary, and it was talking about debate, and it was talking about several different high schools, but the ones that won a lot were in these like very rich white suburbs. And they brought on like very famous people who were also in debate teams, right? Very like neoliberal, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, they were on there. But then this one school in a predominantly Black and Latino area in California, they were using a different approach to debate. They were basing it off of Paulo Freire, the Brazilian Marxist philosopher. So it's interesting to see like all these well-known politicians who have no idea they're in a documentary that's talking about a Marxist.
Right.
And so then I was like, what is this? What is the banking model of learning? What do you mean, like, the way that school is taught and all of this stuff is like from this Western, colonial framework. So then that really got me thinking about how the whole thing is done. Before I was just looking at, improving certain ways to learn like certain mechanical things. Like I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. Whereas after that, I was like, oh man, maybe like the whole thing needs to be abolished. Like the whole thing is oppressive.
Yeah.
So that got me on that track. So that's why that was like an important milestone. And then it got me reading more. And then got me, from reading, aware of Marx, but this like, maybe I need to take Marx more seriously. Let me read more into Marx. Right.
Yeah.
And then the second milestone is like, again, going back to how this conversation started, there was already like people trying to teach self-defense martial arts on the left for anti-fascist reasons. But then now I'm cursed because now I have this new lens, right? Yeah. Once I can kind of see like the banking model, right? Which that in itself doesn't, let's just use that term for now, but there's like better ways to think about it. But, that's like a good starting point. But now I can't unsee the banking model. And then I'm like, wait, you guys are using the same banking model as the fascists. What is happening here? How is what you're offering, your manual is the same manual. You guys are reading out of the same book. You're like replicating, using the master's tools,
right,
and doing the same stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was the second milestone where it's kind of like, if you're offering an alternative, it can't be just like liberalism where you're like, okay, we're going to do the same stuff, but we're going to like, have it represented by like, marginalized people, right? Which is like what liberals do. It's like, we're going to have, a capitalism that's more like representative and diverse, right? Rather than like, maybe we ought to rethink this whole capitalist thing, right?
Right.
So I was like, well, that's not really an alternative then. It's the thing for an alternative group of people, but the thing is not alternative. So when I saw that contradiction also, that further was like, I needed to like, I was already doing something alternative, but then I was like, I need to give other people that same alternative. It needs to exist for other people, right?
Right.
A lot of organizing is like, we need to give people an alternative. You can't just be like the same stuff. We have to offer them an alternative that's better.
Right.
So I'm not saying it's better, but I wanted there to be an alternative because there's plenty of, if you want the same old stuff, it exists.
Right.
So it's not like I'm stopping anybody from doing anything, but in case somebody wanted something else and kind of had that kind of spider tingle where like, man, is there something else? Like I wanted that to exist for them.
Right.
So then I guess that's how it became more public facing.
Okay. So I want to understand then what the principles are of liberation martial arts. Like how would you, let's say someone was very familiar with the other mode of learning and training, I mean, what would they notice if they came and trained with you or they were to begin their program online, whatever it was that they were coming in from?
I guess if they came to me, right, going back to martial arts, I can't escape it either, right? So they saw something, they heard about something, they already had an expectation. So in a way, it's easier because there are already people looking for an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't know what that is, so I can't live up to their expectations anyway or disappoint them because they don't know what that is anyway. So for them, what they might notice then is a lot of it starts from the body. It starts much more like a somatic process because we begin with the understanding that everybody's already been harmed. They're not like a state of emptiness. They're not a blank canvas.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to get them in their best ability to learn. And so, the best way to learn, you have to not be bored, but you can't be anxious. You can't be stressed. You can't be in a state of fight or flight. So trying to like get them as comfortable as possible so that their brain is most prepared to learn. Because if not, they might not retain anything that we go over.
Right. Yeah.
So, I guess I talked about those milestones, but one of the things I started reading a lot about was neuroscience and just how the brain works too.
Yeah.
And just the best ways to like learn and also best ways to also like keep the brain from getting too excited, aroused, scared, stressed, those things. So I think that would be the first thing. It's like it might not even feel like martial arts at first. It might feel like somatic therapy. That's like a term that, I've heard a lot of people who've come to me have said, and it's not like by accident. I've also like tried to research as much as I can about somatic therapy, but also in doing it that way where it feels more abstract, it reduces anxiety because once we start talking about martial arts and fighting and like this and that and attacks, it already gets them to excited. Not excited as in like they're happy. I'm not saying they're sad either or scared, but just like
they're activated.
It triggers a lot of big feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So by first distancing it from that, we're able to get a lot done.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So make it more about like just movements and feeling comfortable with yourself. Also feeling comfortable in this environment. You're in a new environment. I'm a new person.
Mm-hmm.
Just feeling comfortable in all those different ways.
Right.
And investing in that and recognizing that matters.
How, we were discussing how often what's attractive about martial arts and maybe repellent to some others is it's a very kind of individualist. It's about you, the self, overcoming an opponent ultimately, right? You're like training to overcome an obstacle in the shape of a person or something, right? How, like, what, I guess I'm curious because, the left, as it were, which is a very broad kind of amorphous thing, but it is about creating community and taking care of the needs of yourself, but in doing so, you're taking care of the needs of others. So how does how do you go to competition? Like how do you experience community in a martial arts context, whatever that may be, the training or the competition side of it? I mean, I'm curious how that's applied.
Yeah, I can't speak for other gyms or how they do it, but our approach, the LMA approach, is being other-centered or partner-centered rather than self-centered. So that in itself has an accusation of how we normally train, right? We're thinking about like, what are you going to do to me? What if you harm me? Going back to the parents putting their kids in like martial arts for protection against bullies. There's this belief like you're never going to be the bully, right?
Right.
Your kid's never going to be the bully. So what we mean by partner-centered is there's two things happening. We center the other person, so we think about them. We make sure we're safeguarding them. But also it makes for better learning. So there's two things happening. You're no longer self-centered in multiple different ways. You're not putting yourself as the priority, which oftentimes, like even in these type of like inclusive or like more conscious like martial arts practices, it is still centering the person, because it's like, oh, it's about what happens to you, not what you might do to others, right?
Yeah.
We're going to make sure you feel safe. But wait, how do I know this person is going to be safe to me? Right.
Right.
So decentering yourself, centering the other people. But also when you center yourself and you're thinking about yourself, then you're also thinking about your own mechanics and how you're moving.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about yourself and how you're moving, do you know, if you look up like there's academic research about the phenomenon of choking, or sometimes also called the yips. The yips is like a lesser form of choking. Choking, not literal like somebody's choking you, but the sports idea of choking.
Right.
Right. Where like often the thing that they study the most is golf.
Okay.
Where you're like, okay, I'm a pro. I'm supposed to be really good. Why did the ball fly way over there when it should have flown over here? Right.
Right.
So something minor like that could be a yips. A bigger version of that could be choking. And the definition of choking or yips is too much self-monitoring. You're too aware of your internal state and how you're moving. Right. When we walk, right? When we walk, we swing our arms, and we swing our arms contralateral to the leg. So if my right leg goes forward, my left leg swings. My right leg goes forward, my left arm swings, right? Once you bring attention to that and people become aware of that, they start walking like marionettes, where it's like right arm and right leg moves together. Left arm and left leg moves together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because now they're kind of choking.
Yeah.
They're too self-aware, self-conscious of themselves. So this does a lot of great things for us, where we're partner-centered. It's easier for us to learn because we're no longer focusing on ourselves, and then we're just looking. And then when we're looking at you, I can better aim. If we're like, let's say striking, I could better aim. I'm going to make sure it lands where it's supposed to.
Right.
Whereas if I'm focused on how my arm is supposed to move, I'm no longer aiming.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm not going to protect you. So because I'm not even looking, I don't even know that I hit you in the groin or I hit you in the face, because I'm not paying attention to you, right? I'm paying attention to me, and I'm already coming in like, I need to make sure this is a safe space for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I hit you, and then you hit me back the same way, because it's like the person got startled and they had a fight-flight response too, right? So it's escalated, but I don't recognize that I escalated them. And then it keeps escalating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden it's like, so in that way, when you center yourself, you're also making it unsafe for everybody else. When you're looking, right, then you're better able to like aim and not escalate the situation. The other person does the same, right? And it's also not all left to chance. There's also, when people run these type of clubs, there's also facilitators, or I call myself an organizer, because I'm the one organizing the training, and then I'm watching too. And also people have like the ability to speak up, say something,
Mm-hmm.
So there's systems of redundancies, like you mentioned with your own recording. You got to have like multiple ways of you don't want to just rely on one thing.
Right.
Because also when you're like, we're going to try to make a safe martial arts space, right? And we're going to make it for the uplift and prioritize the most marginalized people, right? But how are you going to make it safe? It's a very, like, do you have an actual system, right? Like, how are you going to ensure that it's safe? I'm not saying the system we have is going to guarantee safety. It's not. Nothing's going to guarantee your safety. I can never guarantee anybody's safety, right? You like, your safety, unfortunately, in this world can never be guaranteed. And that's also a red flag. If anybody can guarantee your safety, you go to a one-day self-defense thing and they're guaranteeing your safety after this one day, red flag. They're just lying, right?
Yeah.
But at least I have a system. At least there's a system in place versus just, using that language.
Yeah.
And when you use that language, you're making promises, but having no system to even like attempt to keep those promises.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. So you're basically, as people begin, you want to create a space where people feel like they're not even, they're not even training in martial arts. It's just about being in touch with your body, understanding the mechanics. And then as you are beginning to interact with others,
Mm-hmm.
you are able to better learn because you're not so self-centered.
Yes, and
kind of
self-conscious.
Self-conscious.
Self-centered and self-conscious, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so as you work with yourself, you focus on yourself. Your gaze is inward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you work with others, your gaze moves outward, which is where it should be. Because imagine if like you and I are having to do something where we're going to like hit each other to the chest, but we both want to make sure we don't hit each other to the face or the nose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm focused on you. I'm living in the material world. My gaze is on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus you are thinking about how you ought to move your arm. So now, even though your eyes are open, your gaze is moved inward. You're in the theater of the mind, kind of doing a mental model of how you should be moving. So your eyes are open, but you're not really looking at me. You're running through that script. You're rehearsing it in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're about to execute it on my real body, right? Do I feel safe?
Yeah.
I'll feel much safer if you're actually looking at me rather than being in your internal state, rather than you being in your mind.
Yeah. This might be tangential, but this reminded me of something, which is, if you've been in this situation or not, but you start roughhousing with someone and at first it's like a joke and you're just kind of messing around. You're slapping each other and punching and then grappling. Before you know it, you're just like beating the shit out of, I haven't done this, but it just escalates, right? It starts as like roughhousing and play, and then it turns into like, you fucking punched me in the nose. Like, and now I am just seeing red and I want to hurt you. And is that kind of in the realm of what we're discussing as far as like lacking? I'm trying to figure out again, this might be a tangent, but it just sort of reminded me of this experience that a lot of people have. And obviously some people can be intoxicated or whatever, and that's a whole other thing. But like, it's like, I want to say lack of self-control, but it's almost like, there's something going on there where
there's an essence.
There's an essence.
Yeah. So yeah, let me take it from there then.
Okay.
There could be a lot of versions of that, right? You gave like the most kind of like visceral, like that we could imagine that from our childhoods, whether we were involved in it or like people we knew were involved in that. But it doesn't even have to be that extreme. Yeah. Something you said is very salient, which is you said you might start out laughing.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what is laughter? It means fun. You're having fun, right?
Yeah. Typically. But laughter can also be a way to break tension. Yes.
So I could even see where it's like, I've seen this where people post videos, from these accounts because we're all kind of part of the same like ecosystem of people on the left talking about martial arts. And then I see like some sparring video. Then like to the untrained eye, they might be like, oh, they're laughing, so they're having fun. And it didn't get to the point where like you hit my nose and then like now we're really like fighting. But I see them kind of abruptly stop or abruptly separate. And they're kind of both laughing. And then the person who uploaded it, might not recognize what that means. They're like, laughter means they're having fun. It's just, see, we're being playful. It's good. And maybe they are, but sometimes what I see is they broke off before I'm going to punch you in the nose and you punch me and the laughter was a sign of tension building. Right. So it was, and then they separated, and they took a breather. Nobody told them to. They just kind of, and sometimes they don't take a breather and it kind of keeps going. Right. Yeah. So even without going into your example, even in lesser examples, right? Like things are already escalating sometimes at the point of laughter. Right. Yeah. And I'm only counting, right? Not me as in myself, but if I'm a participant in that, I'm only counting the times you're hitting me. I'm completely unaware of how often I'm hitting you.
Oh, okay.
When you see a beginner martial arts, or I'm working with a beginner, let's say we're doing something playful to start, and then I we start out with foam noodles often, just to distance themselves from that violence, and also try to like reframe the stakes here. Like the stakes are not high. There are no stakes. Like nobody's gonna get hurt with foam noodles, right? And also it's a game, so it's not life or death. I'll call it a game or an activity to try to use the language that is like that has no stakes,
Yeah.
right? Mm-hmm. And if I touch them once, right, sometimes their reaction will be like big, and then they're already kind of like moving very quickly. You know, sometimes like you're not supposed to hit to the face, but they've hit me to the face several times. And then sometimes I stop and I'm like, this is a good learning moment, right? Because now I can see that your gaze is inward, where it's not focused on me and you safeguarding me. All you've recognized is in your mind. If I asked you how many times, you know, either one of us got hit, even though I touched them once, they're going to remember they got hit 50 times. And then if I ask them how many times they hit me, they're going to say once.
Right.
Like memory is not reliable like that, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's how they remember it. If my once turns into 50 and their 500 turns into 1. Now going back to your example or these other examples, that's the same thing, but they're both but like the experienced person can kind of like keep their wits about them and like, you know, see things as is happening. Versus them, they're both like, maybe there was like 5 hits per person, but now like you've taken liberties on me. You've hit me 50 times and the other person's like, you've hit me 50 times, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess this approach, is there a kind, I'm sorry to use the word, I don't even know if this is appropriate, but it almost feels like there's a breakthrough. Is that breakthrough, I guess, or that process of learning and integrating that, is that part of or in whole the liberatory aspect of this program? What, I guess I'm asking, like, people approach your program, the training that you're helping to provide, and they might say, well, what is liberatory exactly about this? That must be at least a component of it, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
To put a finer point on it, right? I'm not the only person who uses that term, because that's like a language that is very, I don't want to say popular, but it became widespread, you know, especially after Palestine.
Yeah.
You know, the genocide in Palestine. And then people started thinking about liberation. And then that became kind of like a term that people used often. And then let's say I'm saying I'm a therapist and I'm a liberatory therapist. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Probably means I'm recognizing the Western diagnostic biomedical model of, you know, psychology is problematic, to say the least, and far worse than problematic. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to abolish that and we're going to do a new approach, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to martial arts, again, other people will use that term too, liberatory. But often what they mean, or when they say left martial arts or whatever, they haven't done that, right? They haven't abolished the manual and come up with an alternative. And they haven't even thought to do that, right? And it's like kind of interesting where if they were saying they were going to do a liberatory, let's say, you know, they were a therapist, then they would recognize that that's how they would mean it, right? They would be like, we got to come up with a new model, or like, you know, it's supposed to be a description. You're describing a way this is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in martial arts, when people use that, or when they say left martial arts, or like, you know, anti-fascist or whatever, it's kind of in a way where like we're using the same manual, but we're talking about who it's for, or who's going to be the teacher, right? Like these faces, we're going to represent it with different people, but it's the same manual.
Yeah.
So in that context, then what I mean by liberatory is more of that traditional description, which is we're like abandoning this other way of learning, not just martial arts. It's, the way you learn martial arts is the same way you learn how to write in school, and like a lot of this, like belt ranks in martial arts, to connect it back to school, is not native to any martial art. It started in Japan. It started Japan in that primitive accumulation period before they really started their imperialism.
Mm-hmm.
And they got it from the United States school system that has started implementing the ABC like letter grades.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They started doing the letter grades, and they wanted a martial art equivalent of that. They did it. And then going back to capitalism and imperialism, right? It spread. It spread because of course, the U.S. already had grades, so the belts made sense. And then, the GIs brought that back.
Right.
But going back to capitalism, it's like, hey, like belts for your kids. It's like kind of a marketing tool to like maintain retention, get people to sign up. I want to be a black belt. It automatically gives a goal. So that's another reason why it spread. So the pedagogy that we're using, if people recognize school is problematic and stressful, right? Like the grades are stressful. You're going to add that to martial arts too. You're adding that same stress.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I got to test in school. And now I got to test in martial art and stress out the same way.
Yeah.
Like these are not native. Like these are things that were like invented traditions. So it's the same pedagogy.
Right.
So my point is like, if you call yourself a liberatory school teacher, then I'm assuming you're abandoning like the letter grades and you're abandoning that whole type of like standardized like testing model, and you're doing something different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Martial arts uses the same pedagogy, at least in the West.
Right.
Martial arts in the West uses the same pedagogy. And it's like, there's no consensus on what is martial art, but if they're marketing themselves as martial art, it is kind of like this schoolmaster. You repeat, like you write the letters over and over and over, and that's how you're going to learn how to write, right?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of model. I come up with the things you write, you repeat after me. So a lot of that system isn't abandoned, right? Even though you might use that term, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I'm using it more in the way that you would normally expect it, except people even on the left, for whatever reason, when they're thinking about martial arts, they're not thinking about it that way. It's like kind of like the one exception, right? Other stuff, you're like, I want a different approach. I want an alternative. Where this, it's like, oh, same approach, kind of like the liberal thing where it's like, diverse capitalism, like the same problematic approach, but let's make it more diversified and a little bit nicer. Let's like not have people yell at each other and like talk nicer, but it's going to be that same type of like, what did you, the term you use, like authoritarian, right? It's top down. Maybe they do it like a skill share, but even in that skill share, in that what they call block practice, in that block of time where it's my turn to skill share, we're going to use that system. And then when it's your turn, you're the one has the knowledge, and it's going to trickle top down, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So to answer it or make it more clear, then I guess what I mean is I'm describing that we're trying to offer an alternative that tries to live up to the values that a lot of us would liberation politics if we were to apply that to a teaching model.
Right. Right. And you just basically said it, because it's like, it's interesting what becomes so, we said, actually really kind of repeating what we said earlier on, but it's the water we're in. We don't notice it. And there are these like, people will think about, well, how do you decolonize education? How do you decolonize psychology? Can they be decolonized and we need something completely new or something different or older that we can draw on, et cetera,
Yeah.
But something about martial arts, there's a mystique in it, about it. And I talked about my exposure mainly through popular culture. It's just sort of like, this is an ancient practice. Yes, there's modern ideas, it evolves and changes, et cetera, but there's like these ancient techniques and practices. And I know a lot of this is just Hollywood or like maybe Chinese cinema that became popular in the United States through, whatever, or anime. I mean, like all of this, that there's this melting pot, as it were, of things that sort of give us this idea of what something is. And so then you sort of assume, because of its ancient patina or whatever, that it has, that it is the best version of what it's always been and will always be. Mm-hmm. And that's just how it's done. Right.
Uh-huh.
But
and they figured it out a long time ago.
They sure did. They figured it out a long time ago. And now people are like finding out those old secrets and bringing it back and teaching it to you. And that's largely marketing and other things. I see this in other realms. I've explored some of that with psychedelia. I've explored that with like yoga. brought guests on to have, deeply researched these things or talk about these things. But like, I guess I think that's what attracted me in part to you and having you on, is because I'm like, I think that's another thing that maybe we just don't think about. It almost as the exception to the rule, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right.
And when we realize that, then we realize, wait, we do this for a lot of things. We kind of like, we think about radicalization as some kind of baptism, right? Again, borrowing another idea. We don't use that term, but all of a sudden I'm radicalized. Like all the old ideas gone. It's just, I couldn't possibly be having any of the same assumptions I had before, right? And it's like, no, there's probably a lot of baggage still left over, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like, for me, like once I start teaching and working with people and we talk about martial arts, sometimes like they're like, wait, this is like this other thing, or, sometimes I have to use something else as an example so that we remove people from martial arts. We can problematize martial arts by like looking at something else and then come back to it, right?
Right.
So we started out with the water analogy just to bookend back now, because now it's much more salient than the first time.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I know I've been keeping you a little longer than an hour. Can I ask you one kind of somewhat bigger question, and then?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Are you good on time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
I'm
you.
fine.
Just this made me think of this, because I'm wondering if in your in developing this, are you drawing on? Is there a way in which, like, you're talking about how contemporary martial arts often has this very imperialist and colonial structure. There's a lineage there that you can draw. You can find like, okay, that's where that sort of structure came from a bit.
Well, there's the martial art, and then there's the way you teach the martial art.
Right. So,
and those are two different things.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask is, like, in developing this, are you drawing on something that maybe existed before this sort of happened? Is there, because I was thinking of like, oh God, I'm sorry, I cannot remember the name of it. It's a Brazilian martial art that's like basically dance.
Capoeira.
Thank you. I was gonna say like a completely different name that was completely wrong. And a lot of this was, from my understanding, it was developed and it was sort of disguised as dance, as a means of sort of being able to train in this, but also it is dance. Like that is a big part of it. That is its, So what I was thinking about is like, in the way that martial arts would have been trained, experienced by people, kind of like, was it more akin to like a dance? Was it more akin to something that you did that, I don't know. It's like, I was just thinking about other body practices that before it became like this goal-oriented thing. Like, I'm gonna have this physique, I'm going to be able to do this pose and yoga. It was actually something different. And the goal, if you had a goal, it wasn't really a goal, but it was like the journey, whatever. But it was this experience you were having, and being able to practice it was very rewarding in and of itself. And I'm wondering if you're drawing on something of that kind when you develop this.
Yeah, you're on the right track, or at least on a similar track I was on. So maybe right's not the right word, but like right as in so far as like you're interviewing me and you're right. You're right on the right track of like kind of how I was thinking about things, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So going back to like, what is martial art, right? Like martial like implies militaristic, but like the militaries had their own practices. They're not going to be doing like one-on-one things, right? So it's better to categorize most of what we call martial arts as like folk arts, like folk traditional arts.
Okay.
Some of the martial arts we practice now, they're like invented traditions that happen much later than we realize, right? For like different reasons that are not necessarily about like maintaining like folk traditions. But a lot of them grew out of like other folk traditions. So going back to that, right? There's no like one universal rule, but you look at a lot of them and then you look at the folk dance traditions in those regions at the time, and they look very similar. The movements look very similar. So it might be like they kind of came out of the same origins. Like the martial art came out of the dance. right? So I think you're onto something with that,
Okay.
right? Like, you want to like tell a story through the body, right? And this dance is a way to tell this story. And then the martial arts is kind of like, maybe an offshoot of telling a story where it might be about warriors or, about your own mythology of like, gods or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, and then that can like lead to these bodily practices, right? So there's some of that. There's some origins that are similar to that. There's also a lot of these folk arts were just games in the past. Because like I said, the militaries are, the ones that like fought in groups, they had their own exercises and practice and like strategies that happen separately.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, right, like in pre-industrial society, you had festivals based on the seasons. The seasons were really important for your survival, right? So you had festivals to like celebrate seasons, and some martial arts still have those festival traditions, right? And so you wanted to play these games to celebrate these festivals, but these are people I need to work with. I don't want to harm them because it's like all hands on deck.
Right.
We also didn't have something like antibiotics. So if they even got a cut, this person's like really good at this thing and they're playing this game. And if they get cut, we no longer have this person. Like that could be very detrimental to our entire village, to our entire ecosystem. This person has knowledge about how to do stuff. And if this person's gone, we're in trouble, right?
Right.
So a lot of the folk games that became martial arts were like, the only way I could classify them, it's not like an accepted term, but I like to call them like off balancing games. We grab each other and we try to just like off balance each other. And once the person's off balance, like we're done.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like fun, but nobody's like getting cut or like really hurt.
Right.
And so a lot of these, like some of them don't exist anymore, but we have, some kind of written record about it or whatever. But they were kind of like that, right? I grab you by a belt maybe, or I grab you by your elbow and neck or collar, right? There's a lot of like, I push you, or we what was accessible for pre-industrial societies? Dirt, sand is available. We could just with our finger draw a circle, right? And then it could be something like, okay, we got to push each other out of the circle,
right?
Because we need something that people can learn and do right away,
right?
So it just has to be like a simple game, right? So a lot of these kind of came out of that. So I became aware of that because I looked to the past.
Yeah.
Right. I researched the past. I talked about researching the brain, but I also researched the past, and I drew a lot of inspiration from that, how things were taught in the past, where it was like done much more informally. Right. Yeah. A lot of what we take as like the term drill came from the military. It's the military term, and that's how we learn. Right. So the pedagogy came from the military, like the Western military, a lot of that drilling. Right. And then it got like once Malcolm Gladwell talked about the 10,000 hour rule, everybody was like doing like 10,000 rep rule, trying to drill everything. Like, so even when I started in the 80s, like I did a bunch of martial arts over time. We didn't drill nearly as much.
Yeah.
So we drilled a little bit because of the military influence, because a lot of the people like were in the military, the teachers were.
Yeah.
Whether they're like Americans that brought it over, or some of the teachers from these countries were also in the military. So they're just like, oh, this is a good way to teach people, or so they thought, right? So they were using drills, but not nearly as much as, there's a movement away from that now a little bit, but like, 5 years ago, and it's like since that book, people just started drilling way more.
Malcolm
and then it just became
Gladwell.
all about drilling. So people, and the thing is, like, younger people don't even know who that guy is. So they don't know so as far as they knew, drilling was always the norm, right? It depends on when you started. So as from the day one, you drilled a lot. So you just think now for you, that's authentic. That's the way it's always been, even though it started after his book.
Is that really the origin of like, it takes however, was it 10,000 hours to learn something and become a master of it? Is that where that, like, did he, I mean, I know he did his research or whatever, but like, is that like the touchstone?
Yes. For a lot of things, like people took it to golf, like every sport, right? Because he was also talking about like, masters of chess, masters of sports, right? And then the person that he was like using the study of wrote his own book to like dispute that book. It's like, it's not a 10,000
Oh my
hour
God.
rule.
It's like a pop. What is he? A pop something, whatever. Anyway, that's
Pop
fascinating.
science writer.
Yeah. Pop science would be, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I was just, yeah, very curious about that. So thank you for that. I guess the last last thing is just if, I mean, is this rooted in Taekwondo, the martial art, or like are you drawing on different like what like I guess if people were to come and train, like what would they be learning like in actuality?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the online curriculum is the approach. So then you could use that approach for anything,
Oh,
right?
okay.
It's just like it's the alternative approach, right? It's
Right.
like instead of doing this, what we talked about for the last hour, instead of doing that, here's an alternative approach rooted in like the way things were done in pre-industrial. I don't even want to say like indigenous societies or pre-colonial, because even like Europe pre-industrial societies had these same similar kind of off balancing games,
I see.
right?
Yeah.
And they had these kind of like folk traditions. They had their own folk dances, so I that was the thing I realized, right? It's like, going when you're studying the past, I might have a bias where it's like, oh, you're bad, but then it's like, wait, before industrialization, there was a lot of like folk traditions that were like very similar across the board, right? Because
Yeah.
we're ultimately humans, right?
Yeah.
And we had kinship networks, and we had very delicate small societies that like any one thing goes wrong and like it could become disaster, right? So it
Right.
had to be all hands on deck,
Yeah.
right? So there's the approach that kind of draws from the past, but also draws from like current science and, always trying to improve the process. Like from like my live journal blog days to now, just constantly thinking about how to improve the process. So there's the approach that you could apply to whatever you could apply it to non-martial arts. You're like climbing, you're like bouldering, you're doing parkour or whatever.
Right.
You could
Okay.
apply it to that. If you're doing skateboarding, you're probably already applying it because like you don't go to a teacher. I mean, now they do have skateboarding schools, right?
Yeah.
But it's
Mhm.
still within the culture acceptable for you to self-direct and just teach yourself by just trying the thing
Yeah.
and just being novel and whimsical, right? Which is much more similar to way like these like folk games were back in the day. You just
Right.
got together with a bunch of friends in like a little area,
Right.
and then you just practice stuff, right? So there's that aspect, and then there's the system where it's like, okay, you come to me and it's like, okay, then, but I want to learn the thing. I want to learn something, right?
Yeah.
So then we, a lot of it was based on the material conditions. So it's like, the curriculum came out during COVID,
Mhm.
or maybe a little bit before, but now we had to contend with COVID and the lockdown, and like striking arts where you're not too close made the most sense, especially when you're training on your own,
Right.
right?
Interesting.
And then then we stuck with that, and then it's like, okay, now that it's safer to be out, like how can we apply this thing? And then it's like, oh, what's the most accessible striking thing that has like kind of like a safe pathway up? And Muay Thai is the safest because they even have like developmental leagues. So meaning like before you get into like full on face punching and whatever, there's like these other developmental events that you can do. And I was like, okay, that's like actual like kind of a very laddered way. So let's like orient around that.
Right.
And so that was like our start as far as the system is around the Muay Thai rule set.
Okay.
And then Muay Thai is a great example of like, it's a martial art that also has a dance, and the dance and the martial art are like identical.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And then more recently, we've been doing some grappling too.
Mm.
So that way, like it's like you don't have to go compete. Like nobody, but like it gives people options if they wanted to.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
No,
It's an option you could take or not take. So we oriented around those rule sets,
Okay. Yeah.
grappling and Muay Thai.
Yeah, I was just curious what I was seeing on social media, on Substack and Patreon, and seeing like what exactly people are practicing.
A lot of it doesn't look like any martial art for a reason, because just to distance themselves from like these ideas that they have in their head, whether it's like so that they don't, try to like, because oftentimes if they have an idea in their head, they stop learning and they just start performing the thing that they think they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is to de-escalate them by like kind of distancing.
Right.
And making it more playful and something else.
This is I have to bring this up because, one thing I keep on noticing, and I mean this in the most positive way, because I think it's good when people are in spaces together, masking is important. I noticed that the people are still masking when you're sparring and training.
Yeah.
You talked about how a lot of this sort of seems to be because of social distancing early in COVID, and that just sort of became part of it. First, I just want to express appreciation if that is actually part of the requirement or it's strongly encouraged in the space. I just want to say I appreciate that. But I'm also wondering if that also plays a part in like how people are orienting towards each other in actual sparring or training or playing or whatever it is.
Yeah. I guess like, to your earlier question about like, if somebody comes, what's different? And I said, if they've heard of our program and want to come in, they're already kind of like looking for something, right?
Yeah.
I guess when they see people with masks, it already like is not interesting to certain people.
Yeah.
And then it is interesting to certain people.
Yeah. Uh-huh. That's for
sure. There's that aspect of it. We did it for so long and it used to be a requirement that people just kept doing it, even though we don't make it that type of rigid requirement anymore.
Okay.
Some of it is for anonymity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Some of it is because there's always there's always somebody competing and want to get them sick before they compete.
Of course. Yep.
So there's just like a lot of factors, but then sometimes like especially with people who are like potting together, they live together, they're like best friends, they're partners, and they don't mask anyway, then we'll have they won't mask around each other. Yeah. So I guess there's no one rule,
right?
But yeah, it is that I guess that is one of the things. I before we started, I said I'm kind of a stubborn person, because like kind of like you keep the podcast going. I've kept these like kind of projects going for a long time.
Yeah.
I guess other projects online that are related to self-defense, martial arts, you don't necessarily see the masking anymore.
Yeah.
And I guess like we ended up like kind of not even intentionally, but ended up being like the curmudgeons who like just still have it on.
Yeah.
So maybe there is a bit of that kind of like, part of it too. Just keep it. So
yeah, I just think like if it's a communal space and you're encouraging these values and these principles, if you can make it a better and safer space for people who are immunocompromised or disabled,
yes.
If you can also make sure that people just get sick less, like that just seems like an obvious benefit. Like you're grappling with someone, interacting with someone, and you're in a tight space like that. It's like, that's a concern I have, honestly. I'm like, I don't want to do it because ever since I started masking, I don't really get sick anymore. And I'm like, I like that actually. So I'm going to keep on doing this. And I think that's part of it too, is just like, logistically or physically doing something like that. It just seemed like, oh man, that might be difficult. But actually seeing that through you guys is like really encouraging, from my perspective. I just wanted to acknowledge that too.
Okay.
And I just wanted to thank you for, at least that's a space where that's at least encouraged or is quite common. I just like that a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It does a lot for consistency. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
When people are not sick,
yeah,
they're
for
training
sure.
a lot more. Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Who would have thought? You're not sick, you train more.
It's wild. Yeah. And yeah, so I just had to make a note of that. Well, Sam, that mostly satisfies my curiosity. And I really thank you for doing what you're doing, because it's at least fascinating for me to watch. And also I think part of it was like, maybe I'll do this, maybe I won't. And I feel more encouraged to do it. I know I'm a podcaster and I get to actually interview and talk to people. Most people are probably not going to reach out to you and record an interview with you in order to get over some kind of weird mental hurdle they're having or something. But I just love what you're doing, and thank you for doing it. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad that we had this conversation today. Yeah.
Yeah, and for sure. And keep in touch. If you do start training, I'd love to hear more about it. We don't have to do it on a podcast.
Oh, of course.
Just between us.
Yeah, of course. And I just want to make sure people know where to go. People can support. They can become a free subscriber as well as a paid one. Of course, there are things that people need to pay to have access to, which makes a lot of sense. On Patreon, and that's under Southpaw Pod. Is that right?
Yes, because it started all from the Southpaw podcast,
Right.
and then that was where the Patreon started.
Right.
And then and then there's southpawpod.com where you can find the links for the Substack or the Patreon.
Yeah, it's on Substack is Liberation Martial Arts, and people can go there.
And then you can find us on Instagram and Facebook as Liberation Martial Arts, and then you could from there find all the links that you need as well.
Okay, great. Do you have any upcoming things that you want to share as far as, I don't know, something that you're working on that you're wanting people to know about, or are you just fine where we are right now in the conversation?
Going back to stubbornly consistent. Yeah, every week I'm releasing something new, and then on social media almost every day, new thoughts. So if you're not, even interested in training, but you just found our conversation interesting, you could just follow the social media, and there'll be some kind of unusual or funny or at least interesting thought, almost every day.
Yeah.
And then there's modules and essays and articles that come out quite frequently. And then I also have the podcast, which I don't do very often, but every once in a while I'll do one, and I'll break down like a recent fight. Lately I've been talking a lot more about Muay Thai.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah, there's that too.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, people, it's really worth following. If you're on social media, give Sam a follow. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been Last Born in the Wilderness. Thank you so much for listening. The music for this episode was produced by Eli Stonemetz. You can listen to Eli's compositions and purchase his music at backyard.bandcamp.com. And if you'd like to learn more about this work, head over to lastborninthewilderness.com. All the resources relating to this episode and every other episode I've produced can be found on its respective episode page. If you are enjoying the work that I'm producing with this podcast, please consider backing it by heading over to the Patreon page at patreon.com/lastborninthewilderness. Most of the interviews I conduct and produce are released to paid members first before I make them available to the public, but fairly often I do make them available to all Patreon members, free and paid alike. So consider becoming a patron of this work at patreon.com/lastborninthewilderness. You can also make a one-time donation via PayPal at paypal.me/lastborninthewilderness. And if you'd like to drop me a line, you can do so by going to the contact page at the website, where there is an option to leave an audio message via memo.fm, or you can leave a message via voicemail by calling the phone number 208-918-2837. There's also just a contact form if you want to fill that out and send that my way as well. And if you'd like your audio message, to be featured on the podcast Patreon page for me to respond to and for all members to hear as well, or instead as a message that's just intended for me to hear, please state that in the message. And finally, if you enjoyed this episode and my work at large, a really simple way that you can show your support is to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, consider leaving a review. That really helps with the visibility of this podcast on those platforms. And please share this podcast with anyone you feel would enjoy and benefit from listening to these conversations. All right, once again, thank you so much for listening. Take good care, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.